What's going on, guys? Welcome to our brand video on this channel. In this video, I'll be talking about the NBA, of course, the NBA playoffs, and even the situation with ESPN. I think I'm going to start the video by talking about ESPN because a lot of people realize that like 100 people were fired from ESPN. That's because ESPN is having some issues with the amount of people that are not watching their network. As a hockey fan, I'm also a basketball fan. When I watch ESPN, first of all, I think the NBA coverage on ESPN is not impressive at all. As far as hockey, any real hockey fan out there, they're not watching ESPN for hockey. And the fact that a lot of people that were covering hockey for ESPN don't have a job right now, it's pretty much a situation with who's watching ESPN, and it's not a lot of hockey fans. So as far as ESPN itself, I notice also some people are saying, hey, you know what, those people that worked for ESPN that were talking about hockey, maybe they could work for the NHL network and the NHL. The issue with the NHL, specifically even recently when they were talking about adding an additional team, which is the Las Vegas Knights, so they're adding a team to Las Vegas, but as a lot of hockey fans know, especially in Canada, it is absolutely ridiculous to have an additional team in Las Vegas out of all areas of the country in the United States, then another team in Canada, where it's their national sport, even with the NHL players not going to the next Olympics. Because even some players might go whether Gary Bettman wants them to go or not, such as Alexander Ovechkin. But really, all the players should go to the Olympics that are going to be playing for their teams because you want the sport to be represented at a world event like the Olympics. And for hockey not to be represented there by the NHL is a joke. And I saw on the NHL website, people were trying to explain it. By the way, NHL website, awful, completely ridiculous. The way you guys try to advocate for the sport. Go to NHL.com. It's a mess. And that's because the NHL does not have people that know how to make this sport a global sport, such as like basketball. And even the fact that NFL football at some point in time became the most popular, and yeah, it's a different season as far as how many games they play during the season, of course, it's much less. But then compare that to how basketball is a global sport. And we all know football, and in the States they call it soccer. Football is a world sport. It's the most popular sport around the world for a variety of reasons. And the way the athletes are celebrated, it's a celebration of the game. The NHL does not have that on a global level. They try in a lot of different countries. And I'm not saying there's not fans in other countries of the NHL. There are, besides Canada and the United States. A lot of fans around the world. But not on the levels such as basketball with the NBA. And the NBA does an amazing job making basketball a global sport. Because you have everyone around the world that follows the NBA, much more than they would follow the NHL. Now, with the NHL itself, you have the situation with ESPN. When's the last time you saw a game on ESPN from the NHL? Been a while, right? Because nobody from the NHL, I guess, has the knowledge or their experience to even talk to a network like ESPN to get your games on that network. Not to say that you would want to at this point in time. And I'll talk about that also about ESPN. And that relates to basketball a lot, but whatever, we'll talk about that. When you look at the NHL, see where the games are. How many of you are tuning into NBC to watch a game? Or even NBC Sports? How many of you enjoy the coverage of the NHL on those channels if you're a hockey fan? How many of you watch the local channels to watch your team and prefer the local channels? See, the issue with the NHL is that they don't appreciate their fan base enough, and they don't connect with an audience that might not know about the NHL. In Canada, most people do not like Gary Bettman. That's the commissioner of the NHL. They don't like him. It's not because they just don't like him personally. They don't appreciate the fact the way he runs the NHL. And outside of Canada, especially in the United States, when things are really messed up with the NHL, it's ignored. Because they can't even get people to focus on issues with the NHL because that's how much it lacks popularity in the United States. And that's because we have other major sports, including the NBA, the NFL, Major League Baseball. My gosh, you might even have people watching tennis and golf and other sports out there. And you got this National Hockey League. That's a great sport. With a commissioner that seems lazy to me. And he doesn't put the effort to make this league better. And you guys mess up in such a variety of ways where if you ask people, who's the star athlete of the NHL? Like the best player in the NHL? Really? They probably wouldn't even know. Some of you out there might know about Crosby or Ovechkin. We're talking about the top athletes of the league. And yes, those guys are very good players in the league. But you don't have a Gretzky in the league right now. You don't. You don't have a best player around the world that's globally accepted. So they either need to figure it out or get a new commissioner. And I'm saying get a new commissioner. And I didn't want to talk about the NHL that way. It's my favorite sport, hockey. But I always say hockey's my favorite sport. Doesn't necessarily mean I think the NHL is the best when they run their league this way. Not impressive at all. Situation with teams that might not have an arena. You guys make excuses for it. Teams get moved around. You make the same mistakes. You don't learn from those experiences when you move teams to an arena where the fans aren't. How many times have you done that? Talking about the fans that actually support the teams. You have people in Canada that want another team, and you put a team where most people just go for vacation. Yes, you have people where there's communities there, of course. It's the United States. How many people were asking for a team in Las Vegas? As soon as you heard all of this stuff going on with ESPN, everyone's like, I guess ESPN doesn't care about hockey. And then you have this situation where some people are saying, hey, maybe the NHL network again should get those people. That is not going to change the way the NHL promotes the game. It's going to take a lot more effort than adding some people to the NHL network. No offense to the NHL network, but a lot of that is not impressive. And that's because you guys don't get it. My suggestion, although I don't always agree with those guys, but more often than not, they do a fantastic job. And that's Shaq and Barkley and Kenny Smith and Ernie. NBA on TNT. They do an amazing job. You want guys like Shaquille O'Neal talking about the sport. It's a lot of fun. And you have other guys in the NBA that work for the league. They're great advocates for the game of basketball. Really. I'm not saying the NHL doesn't have guys like that. But a lot of them are from the days when the NHL had star athletes, real stars. And right now, it's not like that. And it's not the players' fault. It's not the fans' fault. The league has a commissioner for a reason. He should be the number one advocate for the game of hockey. And he's not. He's a complete catastrophe. And the people who follow hockey or talk about hockey, you guys ignore the situation every season. You don't want to talk about it. And it goes on and on and on and on and on. And you guys in Canada, you know, you got the sports media, whether it's Montreal, Toronto, they want us to talk about everything with the players. And they have a lot of strong opinions about the teams and the players and the management. But when it's about this situation, they pretty much ignore it. While a lot of people around the world don't even know about the league, or they're not getting as many fans as they could. So the league can grow. And that's what you want from a sports league. You want to grow in popularity. So that's what I think about the NHL. And it's no offense to the people that worked at ESPN, that they don't have jobs and they talk about hockey. I don't blame you guys. I think this is about ESPN as a network. And a lot of those people that have jobs at ESPN still, I think that you guys have some responsibility. And even the people that, of course, run ESPN have responsibility first. I'm going to use the Warriors as an example because I'm a basketball fan. Shout out to Dub Nation. Amazing series versus the Blazers. The reason why I'm going to use the Warriors as an example is because you guys that root for the Warriors, you know, even if you don't root for the Warriors, but I'm using them as an example again, a lot of the people at ESPN would trash the Warriors personally. And I'm not just talking about basketball. Talking about just saying a lot of things about these guys that have nothing to do with the game itself. First of all, we'll start with Steve Kerr, because I noticed when he got the job, and they were talking about why he got the job and why Mark Jackson was fired, they didn't really talk about the fact that Mark Jackson's assistant coach was recording player conversations without them knowing about it, and then Mark Jackson knew and didn't tell the owners because Mark Jackson thought that he could just handle the situation or whatever. But if you research about all that, that's what happened. And then you hear the people at ESPN, what they have to say about it. A lot of them were saying that Steve Kerr just got handed a job. And what the Warriors did to Mark Jackson was absolutely wrong. And then why they even fire him, nobody knows. No, that's not true. The owners said why they fired him. And the way you guys made it sound like was Steve Kerr just got handed a job. And then when they won the championship, you guys were basically just saying, well, that had a lot to do with Mark Jackson. Not necessarily Steve Kerr. Even Mark Jackson tried to allude to that himself. That's ridiculous. If you're going to talk about why you don't have a job with the Warriors, but you work for ESPN, you might want to say what was going on. You didn't talk about your assistant coach. So I thought that was the beginning of ESPN talking about the Warriors in a really odd way. I was like, what is that about? It's not that complicated to find some of the things they were saying about Steve Kerr. Just research, Google, look on YouTube. You can hear and read all the stuff they were saying about Steve Kerr. Really obnoxious and outlandish things they were saying about him. Completely out of bounds. What about Kevin Durant and the things they were saying about him? Trying to personally get into fights with him and talk about his family? That was going on? People from ESPN? What's that about? Even this season, out of nowhere, trying to start all that stuff up again. For what reason? And by the way, I wasn't rooting for Kevin Durant when he was on OKC. That's because I was rooting for the Warriors. But when I would root against Kevin Durant, it was about basketball. You know, you root against Kevin Durant, he was on OKC, root against LeBron. I'm not talking about his family. For what reason? Actually, his family would be at the games. And I thought that was cool. Nothing wrong with that. They're rooting for him. He's an awesome basketball player. Although, at the time when he was on OKC, I'd root against him because I'm rooting for the Warriors. You know, the situation with ESPN, you guys start talking about these athletes like you wanted to start fights with them. And not talk about sports. So if you don't want to talk about sports, what do you think people are going to think about your network? I mean, your basketball coverage is awful. Really not impressive. And I can talk about that also. But I just want to continue about this situation with ESPN and people from ESPN that want to start these like personal arguments with these athletes through their network. What about that situation with Steph Curry and Ayesha Curry? Again, when they were talking about why she was even talking during the playoffs? Like, who are you to tell her that she can't talk? She doesn't need permission from anyone to talk? My gosh. Yes, I am saying that as a Warriors fan, but it was noticeable. Even to the point where some people from ESPN were saying nobody criticizes Steph Curry. Everything is perfect about him. Why doesn't anyone say anything about him? Like, what are you talking about? Talk about the game. Were the Warriors winning? What's going on? No, you're talking about him and his wife. What is that about? So people watch your network? Well, the opposite has happened. People start tuning into other sports networks and start getting their sports updates elsewhere. That's what's going on. What about that situation with McGee? No offense, Shaq. Like I said before. You trash McGee, but you stopped all of that quickly, and that really shows what you're about, again, because you are a good advocate for basketball in the NBA, and you're not about that, really. If you watch Shaquille O'Neal and the way he talks about basketball, he's an all-time great, and he acknowledged it was a messed up situation or whatever. He's moved beyond that, but these people at ESPN, they got involved, then they started showing replays of when McGee would mess up. And you guys know, if you root for the Warriors, more often than not this season, McGee has had an awesome season this season. Really, he's balling. There was no reason for that. It was ESPN wanting to get involved in nonsense. Another situation where they compared Ayesha Curry and LeBron James' wife. I don't know her name, but just the comparison was like, what is that about? You're comparing the wives of athletes now? That has nothing to do with the game. Nothing. And you guys continue this ridiculous nonsense. And then when you have this situation where you fired all these people, I noticed on ESPN today, they weren't saying anything about that. They're not going to talk about that. It doesn't seem like it. If they do, they're not going to talk much about it. A lot of times what you guys do is you try to talk about the hype. This is why I noticed when you guys were talking about Michael Jordan and you try to compare LeBron James to Jordan. That's not about sports. That's about nonsense. You guys try to talk about these people in the leagues in a way that has nothing to do with sports. One of the worst situations, though, I mean, as far as like all these situations are really just crazy, I have to say, when you guys start talking about Kevin Durant in a way where you start talking about his family, was crazy to me. Really crazy. And I've actually seen some people from ESPN, even when they were talking about Ayesha Curry, and the way you guys were talking about her was just like, who are you? You can't be serious. There's no reason to be talking about her the way you guys were talking. And for these athletes, and even coaches that are part of the NBA, I think they start to notice what's going on in sports media. Specifically, we're talking about ESPN. And maybe that's why recently when Russell Westbrook has been asked about these games after the game, he would have a lot of attitude. Then when you guys talk about him, you start focusing on his attitude. But guess what? You guys could be really ridiculous. And these athletes know that. And he's not the only one to react that way to the sports media. And possibly it might have to do with the fact that you guys can be really passive-aggressive sometimes with the way you guys talk about these athletes and these coaches. You see how Steve Kerr talks to the media. And really, he's a great advocate for the sport of basketball. But when these people were trashing him and talking about him the way they were, and then one day you might hear something nice that they say about him, you were saying some really messed up stuff about him. Then you want to say some nice things about him. Who are you? That's some passive-aggressive garbage. Because what you're doing is trying to say, he's a great person, but hey, he shouldn't have got the job, or it was wrong for the Warriors to hire him. What is that about? But as far as ESPN, you can't blame other people for what's going on with your own network. And I think some people out there, you're very quick to talk like that. But what's going on with ESPN has a lot to do with ESPN and the people that still have jobs at ESPN. And when you mock teams, and by the way, there's been a lot of trash talk from that network about the Warriors. Even I try to read if Warrior fans even watch ESPN. But I have to think, most Warrior fans, they're not watching ESPN. Even most fans of other teams probably don't watch ESPN all the time because of the way they talk about these athletes and the sports. Even this season, with the way they were talking about LeBron. Now, I don't root for LeBron. I'm rooting for the Warriors. But you guys are talking about him in such a way where I think at one point in time, trying to say that he's afraid or whatever. What is that about? In the NBA, you're saying that he's afraid to compete? He's been to the NBA Finals 7 times. I seriously doubt he's afraid to compete at this point in time. He's 3 for 7. It doesn't mean he's afraid of the NBA Finals. It doesn't mean he's afraid to even compete. That has nothing to do with basketball. It's so ridiculous. That's what it is. It's a joke. And that's what ESPN has become sometimes, a joke. But anyways, I would like to know what you guys think about all of this. If you have any opinions about ESPN or even about the NHL, the NBA, post your comments down below. And of course, if you like this video, give a thumbs up. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.